Hi there, and welcome to my review for Hereditary. So Hereditary is a new horror film coming out from a debut director, Ari Aster, and it's an interesting film and it's gained a lot of buzz. It's basically been regarded as this year's best horror film thus far. It had fantastic reviews, rave response, and I have to say, it's a film which I think is good. It's not a bad film, it's pretty decent, but yeah, I'm not buying into the hype, guys. It's not a masterpiece. So Hereditary's premise is basically just that there's a family and the grandmother dies, and then they have this kind of creepy, psychological, unsettling nature between them, and then things happen, and then it just gets weird and becomes a clusterfuck. And to be fair, you don't want to watch this film with spoilers, so I'm going to just kind of say I'm not going to spoil anything explicitly, but I am going to kind of touch on things here and there. If you haven't seen the film, I'm going to say don't watch this, but at the same time, I have no intention of saying anything explicit about the plot. So this is a film which is just very decent, I think, most of the way through, and then kind of gets really good in the very end, but most of it left me pretty cold. So the first thing I'd say is I just didn't really get into the characters. I didn't get into the feel of it. I didn't really buy into it. I think the biggest problem for me is the thing that really kicks the plot off in the first act, the really big event, is just so silly, and just relies on a series of very silly events and contrivances and stupid stuff that it didn't really connect with me. I didn't really think or feel much around it, and I don't think Hereditary really is that substantial. I don't think it's really making any grand statement on anything. I don't think there's many metaphors. I don't think the ideas really all connect. I think as a psychological think piece it's interesting. I think there's certainly a lot of psychological moments where it's about how the characters feel more than anything else, and I appreciate this is a slow burn horror movie. It isn't a jump scare, shallow as fuck horror movie. It's trying to be a bit more artistic, I guess, although I don't necessarily dismiss all the jump scares as non-artistic. I think you can see what I mean when I say it's trying to not just be standard, it's trying to be a bit different. But unfortunately what really lets it down is just, I don't think the psychological stuff is that interesting. I think it's a film which very much relies on you wanting to invest in the characters, and I think for me personally, I didn't. I don't think there is that much to invest in, and I don't think they are that interesting, to be honest. I think it's a film which is very standard in that respect. It has its very interesting horror moments, it has an interesting premise, and it has its moments that really go places. But really, to me, it sort of felt like a patchwork of better horror movies. It just felt like a mix of other artistic horror movies that I'd rather watch than Hereditary. It just felt like it was a patchwork of Don't Look Now, The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby and Kill List, which I'm incidentally wearing a t-shirt for, and that's just kind of what it felt like. It didn't strike me as such a fascinatingly unique film or original film. It struck me as a hodgepodge of other ideas and other storytelling techniques. It struck me as that kind of film. It had its moments for sure, and I appreciate the tension, and I certainly appreciate the acting, which was uniformly pretty great. But as a whole, the very large portion of the film just didn't really strike me as much. It struck me as slow burn horror movie that wasn't that scary, wasn't that moving. I didn't really invest in it, and that was just kind of it. It's very much a movie that requires a level of psychological investment that I think if you don't connect to instantly, you won't connect to at all. And I didn't connect to it, and I didn't feel it, and I didn't really care for it. And the only thing that's interesting for me is the ending, which itself is a fantastic little ending that kind of wraps up a whole bunch of stuff but leaves a lot of ambiguity. And it's one of those endings which is very well tied into the rest of the film, even if it feels a little left field. So I've really appreciated that, and I certainly thought it was sort of thing which would appeal to a certain type of cinephile, a certain type of cinema fan who would really love what the ending goes for. But I think a lot of the audience might be put off by that. I think it's a film which is just bound to be divisive, because I think it can't live up to the hype it has, and it can't really live up to its own expectations because it's trying to be psychological and deep and meaningful, but I don't think it holds up in that regard, and I don't think it holds up in the side of actually delivering as a horror movie. Now, I don't think that really matters. I think if it was successful psychologically, it wouldn't matter that the horror movie aspects don't work. But it's the pairing of them both that means neither one is sufficiently done, and I think I would have appreciated either a straight horror movie that was done with these strong techniques, or a movie that was genuinely thoughtful and had ideas that I could really cling to and analyse. And I'm starting going what is there to analyse? What could I write about? About grief? About, where is the things I could really talk about here? It's a film which is very well made but doesn't really have much there. Having said all this, I still think Hereditary really works in general. It's a film which is genuinely effective. It has its moments. It has enough glimpses of ideas that you can really dig into some stuff. I'm certain some people could analyse this forever, and I've seen some very good analyses of it. It's a film which is very thorough. It's made with this very slow burn, simmering tension. It has its really wacky, abstract moments. It's a bit bizarre. It's strange. It has its very weird sections. It's not a film which is perfectly normal, and I think that's a strength. I think it's good to be the weirdo in the room sometimes. So Hereditary has its moments, and it's certainly a strong horror film, and I have no doubt that it's going to end up on the top half of this year's horror films, if not towards the top end of this year's horror films. It's a very strong film in a lot of senses, but it isn't a film for me, and that's all I can really tell you about it. I don't think it really holds up psychologically or metaphorically or in any other way that really matters. I just think it's a decent film that's intriguing enough to get your attention, but not much more than that. So Hereditary is certainly a good film, but it's nowhere near being a great film or a masterpiece or anything like that, I think. So that's my opinion on Hereditary. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I've seen a lot of wide-ranging opinions, and I've seen some people who really took against it. I've seen a lot of people who really love it, mostly. So I'd love to hear your response and where you think I'm wrong, because I'm certain most people do think I'm wrong on this. If you want to hear more of my reviews, you can subscribe. If you want to read more of my reviews, you can follow me on Letterboxd or Twitter, links in the description. And thank you for watching Hereditary. It's a good film.